Alien invasion movies come in all shapes and sizes, and they've been a part of cinema for over 80 years. Just as our desire to discover intelligent life elsewhere in the galaxy is understandable, so too is the fear that our extraterrestrial neighbors might not be so personable if they come knocking. Let's just face it, we love thinking about aliens, and we perversely find the idea of them coming to blow us up kinda irresistible. Perhaps we as a people need to see a shrink for this. Nevertheless, whenever a new movie depicting an otherworldly threat comes out, a sizable amount of us can't wait to watch Earth get ravaged in new and exciting ways. But just how many new ways are there? We've seen skyscrapers torched and millions of people vaporized by alien beings plenty of times. In 2010, a scrappy movie made outside the studio system tried its hand at the subgenre in a creative way by showing the annihilation of our planet through the eyes of a handful of people trapped in a high-rise. Made quickly on a limited budget, it soon found itself attracting some major attention, and not always of the positive variety. That film is Skyline, the Strauss brothers' $10 million sci-fi thriller that was partially inspired by the do-it-yourself successes of movies like Right at Your Door and Paranormal Activity. What was intended to be a modest, intimate horror film morphed into something quite a bit bigger, which of course doesn't always mean better. We should note that this episode of What the F Happened is a bit special, because for this one we actually have exclusive insight from the film's co-writer and second unit director, Josh Cordes, regarding the making of the film. So bring out your telescope if you want to see just what the F happened to Skyline. The story of Skyline begins at the visual effects company Hydraulics, founded in 2002 by Greg and Colin Strauss, and one of the premier effects houses in LA at the time, with work in films like Avatar, Wolverine, and Benjamin Button on their impressive resume. The brothers themselves were sought-after music video and commercial directors as well, and though they'd stumbled a bit, quite a bit, with their feature debut, Alien vs. Predator Requiem, they were still in high demand thanks to their work in the special effects realm. The brothers were meeting on gun-for-hire movies while also pitching their own projects around town without much luck. Around this time, the Red 1 digital camera was introduced to the world, a professional-grade camera that would effectively replace the 35mm cameras used by the industry for so long, and they were at a semi-affordable price to boot. Suddenly, it seemed as though anyone could make a movie that looked like it belonged on the big screen. The Strauss brothers saw an opportunity to bypass the studio system and go out and make their own movie, and with their extensive knowledge of the visual effects world, not to mention their own company at their disposal, they envisioned making a low-budget movie that would have the look of a pristine studio flick. Together with two of their visual effects supervisors, Josh Cordes and Liam O'Donnell, they were determined to make a self-contained, one-location feature that would be set in Greg Strauss's home, a penthouse apartment in a high-rise located in Los Angeles' Marina del Rey. The apartment has a terrific view of the city, and being fans of horror and sci-fi films, the group thought, what if you were watching the end of the world from the confines of your apartment? Josh and Liam were both writers in addition to being VFX technicians, and they went off to develop a pitch and outline for a movie about a hostile alien invasion, seen from the perspective of a small batch of friends the day after a raucous party. Before long, the group came up with a sizzle reel to accompany the pitch in order to entice potential investors. The Strausses brought the sizzle reel and aliens designed by the legendary Tom Woodruff and Alec Gillis to talent agency CAA. And before they knew it, they had $500,000 in seed money to start up production. There were some parameters, however. The cast had to be relatively small. The entire production had to be set in and around the building in Marina del Rey, and they had to get started pretty quickly. Ultimately, they started shooting the movie about 3 months after it had been conceived. Brett Ratner, who had a previous relationship with the Strauss brothers thanks to their work on a couple of his films, read the Skyline screenplay and agreed that there was major potential for it, and went about helping the brothers pitch the movie around town. He was also instrumental in bringing it to Relativity Media, the company that ended up releasing it in conjunction with Universal Studios, mere months after production had wrapped. A young, up-and-coming writer named Jeff Nichols, who years later would be known for Take Shelter and Midnight Special, gave the script a read, and offered up ample notes on how best to solve some of its problems. Shooting took place over the span of a little over a month in Greg Strauss's penthouse apartment, now essentially doubling as a soundstage. Almost all of the participants, cast and crew, deferred their payments, meaning they were making the film on faith that it would be successful and they'd get compensation later. Whether or not that eventually happened is not for us to say. Casting was evidently a fairly easy process. Recognizable faces like Eric Balfour from 6 Feet Under and Donald Faison from Scrubs agreed to be in the film. And though the filmmakers met with actresses like Kate Mara and Jordana Brewster, the rest of the cast was rounded out by Scotty Thompson, Brittany Daniel, and David Zayas, the memorable actor from shows like Oz and Dexter. His security guard character was actually written with him in mind, because Cordes and O'Donnell were such big fans. The budget hovered between $500,000 and $1 million for the practical shoot. But the post-production process was so extensive, with the film requiring over 900 effect shots, that the budget landed somewhere in the $10 million range when all was said and done. As alluded to, Relativity Media was the studio that ended up buying Skyline at the Cannes Film Festival in May of 2010. About a month later, the film was slapped with a November release date by Universal, a very tight window for a movie that was not yet complete. Relativity's head honcho, Ryan Kavanaugh, was dead set on marketing the film like it was the next Independence Day. Even though from the earliest stages, it was always meant to be a smaller, self-contained horror movie, closer in spirit to Paranormal Activity. Still, if it was publicity they were looking for, they got it when some footage premiered at 2010 San Diego Comic-Con and made quite the wave, signaling to the world that this previously unknown invasion film was definitely worth keeping an eye on. But the movie's sudden appearance on the industry's radar caught the attention of a rival studio, which was certainly not celebrating Skyline's pre-release buzz. After Universal Pictures announced in July that Skyline was coming out in November, Sony Pictures felt it was too close of an encounter with their epic sci-fi war picture Battle Los Angeles, which was scheduled to hit theaters in March of the next year. Naturally, the studio feared that the little alien invasion movie that would take the wind out of the sails of their much bigger alien invasion movie. Complicating matters was the fact that the Strauss brothers and their hydraulics gang were also working on the effects for Battle Los Angeles. Hence, Sony felt that since they were paying the brothers to work on their movie, the least they could do was wait to release Skyline after Battle LA. Going even further, Sony pursued legal recourse, arguing that they had given the Strauss brothers an early look at their alien spaceship designs and other materials, suggesting the filmmakers had either stolen or liberally borrowed from Battle LA's plans. Sony sent a cease and desist letter to Hydraulics demanding they stop breaching their visual effects agreement, and argued that if it had known about Skyline, it would have never agreed to hire the company to do their Battle LA effects. Our source, and others, argued that Battle LA producer Neil Moritz knew about Skyline before it was even made, when the brothers were shopping it around town, and Skyline's existence only became a problem once Universal gave it a release date and fans reacted so well to that persuasive first footage. Ultimately though, nothing came of all this drama. In March 2011, right after Battle LA was released, Sony dropped their suit against Hydraulics, apparently satisfied that the visual effects company hadn't stolen any of their special effects or breached any contracts. The post-production for Skyline was in overdrive. As mentioned, it was dated for a November release by Universal in July of that year, giving them approximately 3 months to complete a ton of special effects shots. Adding some drama, it was discovered that all the audio that had been recorded for the film was lost somehow. In a panic, production had to start re-recording all of the dialogue, a potentially devastating blow to the film's quality, since that much ADR can never be good. Fortunately for the production, days before the film was supposed to be locked in, the original audio re-emerged and was inserted into the final cut. Relativity and Universal's involvement meant a little more money for the film, leading to a new finale. Originally, the film ended on a down note, with our last two heroes getting sucked up into the spaceship, condemned to a terrible fate. Boom, cut to black. Once the studio got involved, the finale evolved to include a most intriguing epilogue, showing us what exactly the aliens were doing with all of the humans they were abducting. With extra money to make it happen, the brain-sucking coda was hastily added, ending the movie on a true "what the hell did we just see?" note, but one that opened the door for the wild and unpredictable sequels Beyond Skyline and Skylines. A scene involving characters landing at LAX in the first act was also shot and added to the beginning of the film in an apparent effort to clarify the film's central relationships. As should be no surprise, the MPAA created problems for the movie, which was determined to receive a PG-13. It had to be submitted multiple times thanks to vague, unhelpful notes from the organization, such as "the last 30 minutes are too violent." Skyline had to be trimmed in an attempt to appease them, even going so far as to obscure the human brains ripped out at the end with a glowing light. Skyline was not screened for critics, nor did it even get any preview screenings in the weeks prior to its release. Never a great sign, but perhaps more indicative of how tight the window was for the film to be completely finished than anything else. The movie's tone ended up being different from the original vision for the film, which had some more comedic beats and an emphasis on the genre aspects of the piece. It was supposed to be an entertaining B-movie. When it became obvious that Universal and Relativity were intent on making it look like a mega-budget epic, some disappointment on the audience's end was inevitable. Once it was released, the response from audiences was middling at best, and the reviews were not at all kind. When the film finally came out on November 12, 2010, it opened with $11 million on its opening weekend. Josh Cordes described to us hearing the box office results in real time, getting updates from the studio intermittently throughout the first day as the realization sunk in that, while still performing respectably for an independently produced feature, Skyline was not abducting the expected amount of tickets at the box office. The movie fared slightly better overseas, and ultimately ended its theatrical run with about $80 million worldwide. Again, not terrible for a movie that was shot in an apartment with a budget in the $10 million range. The most positive endorsement from any person of note came from Kim Kardashian, who on the day the film opened tweeted the following: "Dreamt about the movie Skyline. My sisters got sucked into the ship and the aliens were after me. So creepy, but can't wait to see it." For this, Kardashian was paid $10,000, and it only got 64 retweets. Talk about blowing your PR budget. Despite the poor reception, Skyline spawned 2 sequels, films directed by Liam O'Donnell, which carry a more spirited and self-aware tone than the original. While its legacy is a complicated one, and most opinions on it tend to be negative, there's something to be said about the pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality behind the making of it. Taken on those terms, Skyline, which was released in nearly 3,000 theaters less than a year after it was conceived, is certainly some kind of achievement.